Ranger Chelsea, and we are at Redcliffe Plantation State Historic Site today out in Beach Island, South Carolina. Redcliffe Plantation is a site that was purchased in 1855 by James Henry Hammond. He was a governor of South Carolina and a United States senator. So this was his home that his enslaved individuals built for him in 1859. We're gonna walk around here today, but there's much more to Redcliffe and the site than just the mansion. As we potentially do more videos, we're gonna show you more of those areas. We have 369 acres, almost 2 miles of trails, 2 historic slave cabins dating to 1859, some horse stables from the early 1900s. So as we do more of these programs, we're gonna show you more of that site. But today, we're gonna look at some areas that we don't really get to see on our regular tours. We're gonna bring some items out of our collections, some of my favorite pieces that never really get to see the light of day. We're gonna head up to the 2nd floor and check out the attic space and even the rooftop. So what I kind of had in mind today was, if I were a child that lived in this house back then and I was stuck inside or stuck at home like so many of you are today, what would I be doing? What would I be filling my time with? What would I be doing here? How would I be being taken care of by my parents if I'm sick maybe? How would I stay clean, which seems to be the big question and topic? How would I do all of that back then? So we're gonna answer some of those questions and you're gonna see some cool parts of our collection and our mansion. So let's head on inside. Hey guys, so we are in my favorite room in this house, and this is the library. So you probably saw a lot of books on these shelves. We have about 2,000 books in the collection. Now what I didn't mention earlier was family members lived in this house from 1859 when it was completed through the 1970s. So that's a little over a century. We're gonna be bouncing around in time. So books in this room, furniture, collections throughout the house. They come from people in the 1800s as well through the 1900s. So we're gonna see some very different pieces. I pulled some books that aren't usually out on display from our collections room. So if I'm stuck at home, I'm reading. I love to read. This was my library. I'd be kept busy for a long time. So I pulled some cool books to show to you guys that are pretty old and have some cool illustrations. Let's start with this children's book up here. This is The 3 Little Kittens. You notice I have my gloves on. Now if you're touching really old books, if you have really clean, dry hands, that's okay too. I'm wearing gloves because we're gonna be touching a lot of different objects today. But this is a really old book from the early 1900s. And we actually have a name on here. That's Frederica Wade Billings. She is a little girl that you'll see pictured in this room. I don't know if it shows, if you can see her in the corner, but this is her. We've got 2 portraits. She was the last child to live in this house, Frederica Wade Billings. She's that last owner's daughter, John Shaw Billings, who lived here till 1975. So maybe you have this book at home, The 3 Little Kittens. This was probably one of her favorite storybooks. I've got cats, I'm a cat lover. I'll read this all the time, even as an adult. We've got some other books too. One of my favorites that I found when we were doing some collections was this 1883 edition of Robin Hood, The Merry Adventures of Robin Hood. And I just love the binding on this book and the cover. It's engraved. And I always like to look in the first couple pages because sometimes you'll see a note. This first note was written in 1883. So John Shaw Billings leaves the last note and he says, this book was given to me, was given to my father, reading upside down, when he was 14 by his father, my grandfather. So we see a note earlier from 1883. And I just love looking at some of the first couple pages because at a lot of times that's where you'll find the year that it was printed. And we have that here too. The Merry Adventures of Robin Hood. And we have the year that this was printed. Maybe you're one of the 5 people who went to school for classics like me, so we learned Roman numerals, and that is 1883. And we just have it open to one of these beautiful illustrations. Mary Robin Stops a Sorrowful Night. So I just love that book because of how old it is and those illustrations. This one might look familiar to you also. Maybe you didn't know it was a book, maybe you did, or maybe you just saw the film. The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. We don't know the exact year this was printed, but we think this was early 1900s too. We have another note that John Shaw Billings has his name in it, but we don't have other notes like that earlier Robin Hood book. See lots of the cool color illustrations in here. Some of you might recognize some of these characters. And another old book that we have, if you couldn't tell, I'm a fan of old books. The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes. Maybe you've read some of these. This one was printed. We have John Shaw Billings' name again. An interesting fact, John Shaw Billings is the last owner of the house who lives here till 1975. Some of the oldest books in our collection actually were brought in by John Shaw Billings, the last owner. And 1901 is when this one was printed. And so we just have some stories. Here's our contents and various illustrations too. So these are some cool books that we pulled out just to show you guys today. Like I said, we have about 2,000 books, so there's many more. We did inventory last week, so we found a lot, or I did, for my first time that I didn't know we had. We had a lot of 1700s editions too. We're gonna head upstairs now though, and we're gonna look at some historic toys and other various objects that we pulled for you guys. You'll notice there's a chairlift on the right of the screen. Sadly, it doesn't work anymore, so I have to make these steps every day. But that was put in by that last owner that we've mentioned quite a bit, John Shaw Billings, for his late wife, Frederica Billings. So this is our second floor space. You might notice from when you looked at the first floor, there's a lot less decor. It's less ornate. That's because the second floor is more of your private family space. You have more of the bedrooms up here. Now the family had the means to decorate the second floor, but when you don't have company up here, I don't really see the point. So we're gonna look at just some toys that were in our collections room. A lot of these are from the early 1900s. We have various things here. This Jacob's ladder is a toy that a lot of kids used in the 1800s. It's like magic. I don't really know how it works. But that's a fun one. We bring that out on some of our tours. The famous ball and cup, which I have not conquered yet. I was hoping my first time would be on camera. Not today. We've got some dolls that are really not creepy and enjoyable. This one's kind of weird. I want to show it to you because I wouldn't ever play with this at night. But its eyes close when you lay it down, or they come back open. I'm not trying to give anyone nightmares, just trying to teach them history here. And I don't know what happened to this poor fellow. We may never know. We have some other dolls over here too that have seen better days. Unlike some of the other state parks, we don't have any cool live animals we can show you, but we've got this little guy. He's one of my favorite toys because he actually looks kind of cute. He doesn't scare me. He kind of looks like one of my dogs, who I named Dobby. He looks like a Dobby. Stay. Okay. And we've got some other pieces here too. Some of these you might recognize. Maybe some of you are playing some board games at home since you're stuck in the house, especially on a rainy, cloudy day like this. So we have this checkerboard that's from the early 1900s. We have this little toy piano. Sadly, it doesn't make noise anymore. also from the early 1900s. And we have these tea sets. This one I think is from Japan, early 1900s. This one I don't know where this set is from, but also early 1900s. I don't know if any of you have toys at home that are over 100 years old. If you do, maybe they should be protected and put in a display case and not really played with. But these are pretty cool to take out. We can't really play with these now because they're part of our collection. They're objects we want to protect and keep safe. But it's cool to take them out every once in a while and show them to others. You'll also notice there's some little chairs in here. These also belong to some of the children that lived at Redcliffe. This chair belonged to Frederica. Her nickname was Skeeter. She's the one who had the Three Little Cats book, whose portrait we saw in the library. And this belonged to Julia Hammond Richards when she was a child. She was one of the former family members who lived here too. All right, we're gonna go across the hall and check out one other bedroom and some other pieces that we don't often get to look at. This was the master bedroom for John Shaw Billings, that last owner we talked about, which is why they have the chairlift in, because he and his wife are coming up here quite a bit. But in here we can talk a little bit about how we're going to keep clean, or how we would have back then. Because we're constantly hearing it today: wash your hands, sanitize your hands, keep 6 feet away. Well, how would they have washed? How would they have kept clean back then? So here we have a wash set. This is your bathroom back then. So we don't have running water when this house is built in 1859. So this is what we have. You have your wash basin here, a pitcher for cold water, a pitcher for warm water, a shaving mug, a soap dish here. You've got a cup for your toothbrushes. Now, who would have been bringing up this water? Who would have been heating the water here? If it's before 1865, that would have been the enslaved families that lived here. They would have been doing that work and carrying that up for the Hammond family that lived in here. So it is the enslaved who are doing that work. So this, you would have washed your hands in here or your face in here using your pitchers of water. Now, if I said this is a bathroom, where's the toilet? Well, this fine thing is called a chamber pot, and this would have been a toilet back then. Does your toilet look like this today? Maybe, maybe not. It's pretty, it's pink. Not what I would prefer for a toilet nowadays though, but that's your toilet, that's where you go. And who's emptying that chamber pot or cleaning it out? Not the person who's using it. That also would have been done by enslaved families that work here as well. But come 1870s, we have a toilet upgrade. There's still no running water, it doesn't flush, but this is a Wakefield earth closet. You do get to sit, so there's a benefit. Versus the chamber pot, you do have a seat here. You go here, you leave your business behind under there, and there's a little sand trap back here that covers up what you leave behind. Kind of like a litter box. So it worked back then. Once again, it's not running water, it's not modern plumbing, but it's a step up from the chamber pot. Say you get a little too dirty over here. Well, how do you clean off then? Let's go look at another piece. Once again, we don't often show this on our regular tours. We have this lovely bidet. So if you get a little messy after you use the bathroom, this is how you clean yourself up. I want to keep my job, so I'm not going to demonstrate how we do this. I'll just let you look at it, and you can ask your parents. So that's an interesting piece. This one dates to 1935. And here is a shower. We don't see a shower head. We don't see a faucet. Once again, you don't use running water here, but you'd either stand in the middle here, or you sit on this seat, got a sponge, and a drain out the back. Someone would heat up, if it's before 1865, it would have been an enslaved person, heat up water, bring it up here, and pour it over you as you're standing in here. And that's how you would be washed. And at the end, this would be brought back downstairs or outside and dumped out the back. So that's how you would have washed back then. Now, let's look at another piece that I love. since we're talking about sickness, that's kind of on everyone's mind today. This is an apothecary box that dates to pre-1840, I think between 1810 and 1840. Any Outlander fans out there? This is what Claire Fraser would be using, but she has one that's a little more portable. But you have basically a medicine box or a medicine cabinet with several herbs, liquids, medicines that go within here. So we see some that are still in here. I took some out to show you guys. But these are various medications that would have helped with various illnesses. So I'm gonna show this one, extract of English Valeria. I'm just reading the label because the original label is on there. For diseases of the nervous system, hysteria, nervous headache, wakefulness. So I think this is one of the predecessors to morphine potentially. Is this showing up okay on there? Maybe. So you can see a label there and it says Plum and Lightener from Augusta. We are only about 15 minutes drive from Augusta, Georgia, and there was an apothecary there where you would have purchased a lot of these medications. But it's really cool to see that original label on there. We've also got some potassium iodide. I think this helped, probably not back then, but more recently with radiation. You saw Chernobyl, maybe. This one, we don't have the label that has survived. I'll just kind of let you see that this is another one from Augusta. Ooh, we've got our two syrups. This one just has a really cool name. Syrup of Squill. Reminds me of something that would be in Harry Potter's potion class. But this would have been used as a cough syrup in smaller doses. In higher doses, it would have made you vomit, or it could be poisonous. So we hear a lot about coughing, that being a symptom right now of some illnesses. This would have been cough syrup to help with that. Syrup of Ipecac. This was also a cough syrup. And we have a bottle of alcohol. Everyone's looking for this nowadays because this is how you can make your hand sanitizer if you've got at least 60% alcohol or soap. So these are some really cool pieces that we just don't have out very often that date back to almost 200 years ago. Now we're done with the second floor. We are gonna head upstairs to a space that we almost never take our visitors up to, and that is the attic and the rooftop. I feel like I get my steps in every day because we've got to go up all these staircases, and they're pretty steep. And it's going to look a little creepy as we head up there because it's kind of dark. I've never experienced anything crazy. But there's two sections of the attic. One is smaller. We'll take a quick peek in there before we head into the main space. So this is just the smaller sectioned off portion of the attic. But in here, I wanted to show you guys in here because I found something kind of cool. These bricks, this makes up the chimney. These all would have been made by enslaved peoples in the 1850s because this mansion was completed in 1859. And sometimes when those who were making the bricks were turning them as they baked in the sun, they would have left a finger mark. And we were able to find what looks like potentially a thumbprint here. So it's kind of a connection to the past. We don't know who this person was that left that thumbprint, but we do know that they helped build this mansion, and they were probably an enslaved individual. So sometimes I look up here, I try to find more thumbprints, fingerprints. That's the main one I found so far, but it's kind of cool to just sit and look at that. Let's head to the rest of the attic. So this space is much larger. The rest of the attic space here. Still kind of dark and creepy. And we don't know what this space really was used for other than storage. But you see the ceilings are really tall, it's really wide and open. These are the top floor windows you would see from outside of the mansion when looking in. And it's pretty empty now. And we see the continuation of the chimneys too from the lower floors. But from here, we will head up our last set of stairs, thank goodness, up to the rooftop. So we are up on the rooftop now. This is called the Widow's Walk. On a clear day, we can see for miles and miles and miles. Today, we can maybe see to the tree line. It's pretty foggy and dreary, but this space was actually an enclosed room before it was this open air space that we call a Widow's Walk now. It was a cupola, which would have been an enclosed room, so we would have had a roof over our heads here, floor length windows, really an observatory, because James Henry Hammond, that first owner, would have used this space and could have been able to see all of his lands that he owned here in South Carolina, because he owned about 15,000 acres. And on a clear day, and with all of this tree line cut back, because it would have been fields for planting, he would have been able to see all of those acres. This is also a good opportunity to point out some of the other structures we have on site. This is the back side of the mansion, and here we see one of the original slave cabins, later converted to a garage. That's why you'll see a garage door on the front. That conversion happens in the 1930s. Through the trees, it's kind of hard to see, is one of the other two remaining slave cabins. There were originally 4, we only have 2 left today. And to the left, there are some stables that date back to the early 1900s, or what's remaining of that building. But there also would have been a wash house, a cook house back here, chicken coops, corn cribs, lots of structures that have not survived. But maybe on one of our other videos, at one of our other programs, we'll probably go into some of those structures as well. But this is one of my favorite spots to be. The views are amazing on a clear day. Unfortunately today it kind of looks like a dreary winter day. But this is where we're going to end our tour. If you have any questions about Redcliffe, any of the objects that we took out, any of the site, please put those in the comments. We'll try to answer them. Any questions for state parks, you can put those in the comments also. Someone will try to get to those. Please like the video, share it, and join us for some of our other social media tours online as well. Thanks.